unlimited drama series.
The white oleander petals looked innocent enough sitting on my desk that February morning, their waxy surfaces catching the fluorescent light of the FBI field office like tiny porcelain shields. If I'd known they were Rachel's way of saying goodbye forever, I might have appreciated the irony more. "Your wife really outdid herself this time, Ethan," called out Janet from the next cubicle, her voice dripping with the kind of envy that comes from 15 years of marriage to a man who considers a gas station rose romantic. Those flowers must have cost a fortune. I stared at the elaborate bouquet, easily $300 worth of pristine white blooms arranged in a crystal vase that probably cost more than my monthly coffee budget. The card read, "To my darling husband, may this Valentine's Day be unforgettable. All my love, Rachel." "Yeah," I muttered, adjusting my reading glasses as I turned back to the spreadsheet on my monitor. "She's full of surprises." That was putting it mildly. Rachel Cole, pharmaceutical PR executive extraordinaire, had been full of surprises lately, like the surprise of working late every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months, the surprise of new lingerie that I never got to see her wear, the surprise of suddenly being too tired for conversation, too busy for family dinners, too distracted for anything resembling the marriage we'd built over 12 years. But hey, at least she remembered Valentine's Day. "Ethan Cole, forensic accountant," I said to myself, in my best movie trailer voice. A man so exciting, his wife sends him flowers just to stay awake during their conversations. The truth was, I'd been expecting this marriage to implode for months. You don't spend your days following money trails and analyzing financial patterns without noticing when your own life starts showing irregularities. Rachel's credit card statements had more restaurant charges for two than I could account for. Her mileage didn't match her claimed destinations, and her phone had more security than Fort Knox. I was 42 years old, balding in a way that suggested my hairline was retreating from my personality, and married to a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a pharmaceutical company's annual report. Rachel was stunning in that polished, professional way that made other men straighten their ties, and made me wonder what the hell she'd ever seen in a guy who got excited about tax irregularities. "Mr. Cole?" Maya Tran appeared at my cubicle, her dark eyes focused on the flowers with the intensity she usually reserved for computer code. Maya was our tech analyst, a former medical student who'd switched careers after realizing she preferred debugging systems to dealing with patients. "Those are beautiful, but what?" "Those are oleanders, white oleanders." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Ethan, every part of that plant is toxic, deadly toxic. Why would Rachel send you poisonous flowers?" I laughed, the sound coming out more bitter than I'd intended. "Maybe it's symbolic. Our marriage has been pretty toxic lately." Maya didn't smile. "I'm serious. You haven't touched them, have you? Eaten anything near them? The sap, the pollen, even the water in that vase? It's all dangerous." Come on, Maya. Rachel works for a pharmaceutical company. She knows about this stuff. She wouldn't." I stopped, the words dying in my throat as I really looked at Maya's expression. "Would she?" "When's the last time you felt completely well?" Maya asked quietly. I thought about it. The headaches that had been getting worse over the past 2 weeks, the nausea I'd been attributing to stress, the fatigue that made me feel like I was walking through molasses. "Jesus," I whispered. Maya was already pulling out her phone. "We're going to the hospital. Now." The emergency room at George Washington University Hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I sat on the examination table, watching Maya pace while Dr. Sarah Martinez ran blood tests that I was increasingly certain I didn't want to know the results of. "Mr. Cole," Dr. Martinez said as she returned with a clipboard and an expression that suggested my day was about to get significantly worse. "We found traces of oleander toxin in your blood. Not enough to be immediately life-threatening, but enough to cause the symptoms you've been experiencing. Another few weeks of exposure." She shook her head. "You're lucky your friend insisted on bringing you in." "Lucky, right, doctor," I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow. "How would someone typically be exposed to oleander poisoning? Usually through ingestion. Sometimes people mistake it for other plants, or children eat the berries. But in your case, given the low, consistent levels we're seeing, I'd guess prolonged exposure to small amounts. Maybe in food or drink." Maya and I exchanged glances. I thought about Rachel's sudden interest in making me coffee every morning, her insistence on preparing my lunch, the special smoothies she'd been blending for my health. "How long would this have been going on?" Maya asked. "Based on these levels, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks of regular small doses." 2 to 3 weeks. Right around the time Rachel had become so attentive, so caring, so concerned about my health and diet. Right around the time she'd started asking detailed questions about my life insurance policy and whether I'd updated my will recently. My phone buzzed with a text message. Rachel. Hope you loved the flowers, darling. Can't wait to see you tonight. I'm making your favorite dinner. I stared at the message, then looked up at Maya. I think my wife is trying to kill me. Maya's expression was grim. I think you're right, and I think we need to find out why. The drive home felt like traveling through a different universe, one where the woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years had been slowly poisoning me while discussing weekend plans and our daughter's soccer schedule. Maya followed in her car, both of us trying to process the impossible reality that Rachel Cole, loving wife and devoted mother, was apparently a would-be murderer. I pulled into our driveway in suburban Arlington, looking at the house we'd bought when Ava was born. White colonial, blue shutters, perfectly manicured lawn that Rachel insisted on maintaining because appearances matter in my business. Everything looked exactly the same, but I felt like I was seeing it for the first time. Maya parked behind me and walked up to where I stood frozen on my own front walkway. What do I do now? I asked. Go in there and pretend everything's normal? Confront her? Call the police? First, we need to figure out if she's working alone, Maya said. And we need evidence, solid evidence. Because right now, all we have is suspicious flowers and some toxin in your blood that could theoretically have come from anywhere. But we know it didn't. Knowing and proving are two different things. You're a forensic accountant. You understand the difference between suspicion and evidence. She was right. In my work, I'd seen plenty of cases where everyone knew someone was guilty, but couldn't prove it in court. The difference between knowing your wife is trying to kill you and being able to do something about it was evidence. So what do you suggest? Maya's smile was sharp and determined. We're going to catch her. But first, we need to keep you alive long enough to do it. Maya's apartment looked like a cross between a computer repair shop and a medical laboratory, which made sense given her background. She'd set up a monitoring station on her dining room table, complete with 3 laptops, a tablet, and enough cables to rewire a small building. Okay, she said, handing me a cup of coffee that I examined suspiciously before drinking. Old habits die hard, I guess. We need to approach this systematically. If Rachel's trying to kill you, she's not doing it on impulse. This is planned, which means there's a trail. I sat down across from her, still feeling like I was living in someone else's nightmare. What kind of trail? Digital, financial, behavioral. People think they can hide things, but everything leaves traces, especially people who aren't professional criminals. She opened the first laptop. Let's start with the obvious question. Why would Rachel want you dead? Gee, thanks for the confidence boost. You know what I mean. What does she gain from your death? I thought about it, trying to approach my own potential murder with the same analytical mindset I used for financial fraud cases. Life insurance, $500,000. The house is paid off, so she'd own it outright. My pension benefits, and freedom to be with whoever she's been seeing. Maya looked up from her screen. You know about the affair? I suspected. I'm not blind, Maya. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden interest in the gym, the way she looks at her phone like it contains the secrets of the universe. I rubbed my temples, where a headache was starting to build. I just thought she'd divorce me, not murder me. Divorce means splitting assets. Murder means keeping everything. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard. Do you have access to her devices? Shared accounts? Some. We have a joint laptop for household stuff, and I know her passwords for most things. She's not very creative. Uses Ava's birthday for everything. Good. What about her work computer? No access to that, but I paused, remembering something. She sometimes works from home on weekends, uses the joint laptop for personal stuff when her work computer is updating, or whatever. Maya nodded. Perfect. We're going to do some digital archaeology. But first, I want to introduce you to someone. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Silas? It's Maya. I need a favor. No, not that kind of favor. Yes, it's legal, mostly. 20 minutes later, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cyberpunk novel knocked on Maya's door. Silas Rourke was thin, pale, and covered in tattoos that seemed to move in the fluorescent light. His hair was an unnatural shade of blue, and his fingers were stained with what I hoped was ink. So, he said, settling into Maya's couch with the casual confidence of someone who'd spent significant time in places where furniture wasn't guaranteed. Your wife's trying to kill you. That's new. It's new for me too, I said dryly. Silas grinned. I like him. He's got that doomed but sarcastic thing going on. Very film noir. He turned to Maya. What do you need? Data recovery, deleted messages, browser history, maybe some creative surveillance. How creative? Maya and I exchanged glances. Legal creative, she said firmly. Boring, but okay. What's our timeline? Fast, I said. If she's been poisoning me for 3 weeks, and she sent those flowers today, I'm guessing she's planning to escalate soon. Silas nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Poison's a slow method, but it's also unreliable. Too many variables. If she's smart, she's got a backup plan. Wonderful, I muttered. My wife's a criminal mastermind. Nah, Silas said, pulling out a laptop that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. Criminal masterminds don't use their kid's birthday as their password. She's just desperate and thinks she's smarter than she is. Those are the easiest ones to catch. We spent the next 4 hours diving into Rachel's digital life, and what we found was worse than I'd imagined. The deleted browser history revealed months of research into untraceable poisons, life insurance policies, and accidental death scenarios. Her email drafts folder contained messages she'd never sent, including one to someone named Daniel that made my stomach turn. Daniel -E is getting suspicious about the smoothies. Maybe we should speed up the timeline. The insurance policy has been active for 6 months now, so we're clear on the waiting period. How soon can you get the other thing we discussed? Mayans. Who's Daniel? Maya asked. I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Daniel Pierce, Rachel's boss at PharmaCorp. I've met him a few times at company parties. Tall, handsome, looks like he stepped out of a men's health magazine. Ah, Silas said. The boyfriend. Classic. Maya was already pulling up more deleted messages. There's more, a lot more. The messages painted a picture that was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Rachel and Daniel had been planning this for months, discussing me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person. They mocked my appearance, my job, my boring personality. They joked about how easy it was to fool me, how I was so trusting that I never questioned Rachel's sudden interest in my health. But the worst part was the casual cruelty of it all. In one message, Rachel wrote, "Sometimes I watch him eating the poisoned food and wonder if he can taste it. It's almost funny how grateful he is that I'm taking care of him." Jesus, I whispered. Maya's hand found my shoulder. I'm sorry, Ethan. I know this is hard to read. Hard? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Maya. I've been thanking her. Every morning when she made me coffee, every time she prepared my lunch, I thanked her for being so thoughtful. I told her how lucky I was to have such a caring wife. Hurryhoven. Silas looked up from his screen. If it helps, they're both idiots. Look at this. Hurryhov. He'd pulled up a series of text messages between Rachel and Daniel from the past week. Daniel. Are you sure the flowers will work? Seems risky. Rachel. It's symbolic. Plus, if anyone asks later, I can say I didn't know they were poisonous. I work in pharmaceuticals, not botany. Daniel. What if he doesn't touch them? Rachel. He will. He always smells the flowers I give him, says it's romantic. God, he's pathetic. And if that doesn't finish it, then we go with Plan B, the accident we discussed. Plan B? I asked. Maya was already searching. Here, from last week. Hurryhove. Rachel. I've been researching car accidents. If the poison doesn't work fast enough, we could tamper with his brakes, make it look like mechanical failure. Daniel, that's risky. What if they investigate? Rachel, who's going to investigate? He's a boring accountant with no enemies. Everyone will assume it was just bad luck. Hurryhoven. I stared at the messages, feeling a strange sense of detachment. It was like reading about someone else's life, someone else's murder plot. The woman who'd kissed me goodbye that morning, who'd reminded me to pick up milk on the way home, was planning to kill me in a car accident if the poisoned flowers didn't do the job. There's more, Silas said quietly. Financial stuff. They've been planning what to do with the money. The financial records were almost worse than the murder plot. Rachel and Daniel had already picked out a house in the Caribbean, researched how to transfer large sums of money offshore, and planned a grieving period that would last exactly 6 months before Rachel would find love again with her supportive boss. They'd even discussed what to do about Ava. Rachel, the kid will be upset at first, but she'll adjust. Kids are resilient, and Daniel's good with her. Daniel will be the perfect blended family. Plus, with Ethan's life insurance, we can afford the best schools. They're planning to raise my daughter, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Maya closed the laptop. We have enough evidence to go to the police right now. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended.
He texted at 2 a.m. Leave the door unlocked. You left our door unlocked for him?
Once it was
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Not yet. Ethan. No, Maya. Look at what we have. Deleted messages that a good lawyer could argue were fabricated. Circumstantial evidence about the poisoning. And 2 people who are smart enough to have covered their tracks in ways we haven't discovered yet. Silas nodded slowly. He's right. This is good stuff, but it's not airtight. They could claim the messages were taken out of context, that the poisoning was accidental, that they were just having an affair, and the rest is coincidence. So what do you want to do? Maya asked. I thought about Rachel's message from that morning, about the special dinner she was planning, about Plan B and car accidents, and the casual way she'd discussed my death like it was a minor inconvenience. I want to beat them at their own game, I said. But first, I need to die. Dr. Sarah Martinez looked at me like I'd suggested performing surgery with a butter knife. You want me to do what? Fake my death, I repeated, sitting in her office at George Washington University Hospital. Just temporarily, and just on paper. Mr. Cole, I'm a doctor, not a criminal. Maya leaned forward. It's not criminal. We're not talking about insurance fraud or anything permanent. We just need to create a situation where Ethan appears to have died from the poisoning, long enough to catch his wife and her boyfriend in the act. Dr. Martinez shook her head. Even if I were willing to do something this insane, which I'm not, how exactly would this work? I'd been thinking about this all night, lying in Maya's guest room while she and Silas worked on gathering more evidence. You said the oleander poisoning could have been fatal if it had continued, right? Yes, but... And you said I was lucky to get treatment when I did. Mr. Cole, where are you going with this? What if I wasn't lucky? What if I'd come in too late and the poisoning had progressed too far? I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages we'd recovered. Look at this. They're planning to escalate. Rachel's making me a special dinner tonight, and based on these messages, I'm guessing it's going to be my last meal. Doctor. Martinez read the messages, her expression growing more troubled with each line. This is attempted murder. Exactly. And if we can catch them celebrating my death, planning how to spend my life insurance money, maybe even discussing the details of how they did it, we'll have evidence that no lawyer can explain away. But faking a death, the paperwork alone. Maya spoke up. We're not talking about official death certificates or anything that would involve fraud. Just medical records showing that Ethan Cole was brought in with severe oleander poisoning and didn't survive. Records that could be corrected later when the truth comes out. Doctor. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. You're asking me to risk my medical license to help you catch a murderer. I'm asking you to help me stay alive long enough to prove that someone tried to kill me, I said. Because if we don't stop this now, they're going to try again. And next time, I might not be lucky enough to have a friend who recognizes poisonous flowers. If I were to hypothetically consider this insane plan, how would it work? Silas, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. Simple. Ethan comes in tonight with severe symptoms. You treat him, but the poisoning has progressed too far. Time of death. He checked his watch. Let's say 11:47 p.m. Very specific, very official. And then what? I just hide him in a supply closet? Actually, Maya said, I was thinking more like the morgue. Just for a few hours, until we can get Rachel and Daniel on record discussing the murder. The morgue, doctor. Martinez rubbed her temples. You want me to put a living man in the morgue? Temporarily, I said. And only if you're sure it's safe. I've been in worse places. When have you been in worse places? You're an accountant. I was in college once. Trust me, some of those dorm rooms were basically morgues with better lighting. Despite everything, Dr. Martinez smiled. You're insane, all of you. Probably, Maya agreed. But we're also right. And if we don't do something, Ethan's going to end up in the morgue for real. Dr. Martinez stared at the messages on my phone for another long moment. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, I want to be clear about something. The moment this gets dangerous, the moment anyone's life is actually at risk, we stop. Understood? Understood, I said. And when this is over, I never want to see any of you again. That seems fair. She sighed again, deeper this time. I must be out of my mind. But, okay. Here's how we're going to do this. The plan was surprisingly simple. I would go home, eat whatever Rachel had prepared for dinner, and wait for the symptoms to get worse. When they did, Maya would call an ambulance and rush me to the hospital. Dr. Martinez would treat me, but the poisoning would be too severe. I would die at 11:47 p.m. from cardiac arrest caused by oleander toxicity. The death would be recorded in the hospital's internal system, but Dr. Martinez would delay filing the official paperwork until morning, claiming she needed to contact family members first. That would give us a window of several hours where I was officially dead according to hospital records, but not yet legally dead according to the state. And during those hours, Maya explained as we drove back to her apartment, we're going to record everything Rachel and Daniel say and do. How? Silas grinned from the back seat. That's where I come in. I've already planted some very sophisticated listening devices in your house. Completely illegal, of course. But since you own the house and you're consenting to the surveillance, it's more like a gray area. A gray area that could get us all arrested. Only if we get caught. And we're not going to get caught, because we're going to be very careful and very smart. I hoped he was right. Because in about 6 hours, I was going to be legally dead, lying in a morgue drawer while my wife and her boyfriend celebrated my murder. And if anything went wrong, I might end up staying dead for real. But as we pulled into Maya's parking lot, I realized I wasn't scared. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Rachel and Daniel thought they were so clever, so superior, so much smarter than the boring accountant they were planning to murder. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The house felt different when I walked in that evening. Like a stage set waiting for the final act of a play. Rachel was in the kitchen, humming while she prepared what I now knew was intended to be my last meal. She looked beautiful in the warm light, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing the blue dress I'd always loved. It was amazing how someone could look exactly the same while being completely different. There's my Valentine, she said, turning to kiss my cheek. How was your day? Did you like the flowers? They were beautiful, I said, meaning it in a way she'd never understand. Very thoughtful. I'm so glad. I wanted to do something special for you. She gestured toward the dining room, where she'd set the table with our good china and lit candles. I made your favorite beef stroganoff with that mushroom sauce you love. My favorite. The dish she knew I'd eat every bite of, even if it tasted slightly off. The dish with enough complex flavors to hide the taste of whatever she'd added to it this time. It smells amazing, I said, and it did. Rachel was an excellent cook, which I suppose made her an excellent poisoner as well. Why don't you sit down? I'll bring everything out. I took my place at the table, looking around the dining room we'd decorated together when we first bought the house. The wedding photos on the sideboard. The anniversary gifts we'd given each other. The drawing Ava had made of our family that was still stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a heart. All of it was about to become evidence in a murder case. Rachel returned with 2 plates, setting mine in front of me with a smile that would have seemed loving if I didn't know what I knew. The stroganoff looked perfect, creamy and rich, with just the right amount of herbs sprinkled on top. This looks incredible, I said, picking up my fork. You really outdid yourself. Well, it's Valentine's Day. I wanted it to be special. Special, right. I took a bite, tasting the familiar flavors of beef and mushrooms and cream, and underneath it all, something else. Something bitter that didn't belong. How is it? Rachel asked, watching me intently. Perfect, I said, taking another bite. Just like always. We ate in relative silence, Rachel making small talk about her day at work, asking about mine. Normal conversation between a normal married couple having a normal dinner. Except that one of us was slowly being poisoned, and the other was watching for signs that the poison was working. You seem tired, Rachel said, as I finished the last bite. Are you feeling all right? Right on cue. I could feel the nausea starting to build. the headache creeping in at the edges of my vision. The familiar symptoms I'd been experiencing for weeks, but stronger now. Actually, I'm not feeling great, I said. Maybe I'm coming down with something. Rachel's eyes lit up with what someone else might have mistaken for concern. Oh no. You should go lie down. I'll clean up here. Thanks. You're the best wife a guy could ask for. The words tasted more bitter than the poisoned food. I went upstairs and lay down on our bed, staring at the ceiling while I waited for the symptoms to get worse. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. How are you feeling? Like I'm dying, I texted back, which I guess is the point. Silas has confirmed that all the listening devices are working. We're getting clear audio from the kitchen, living room, and bedroom. Good, because I think it's almost showtime. As if on cue, I heard Rachel's voice from downstairs, talking on the phone. The words were muffled, but I could make out enough to know she was talking to Daniel. He ate all of it. Yes, I'm sure. No, he suspects nothing. I closed my eyes and waited for my death to begin. The ambulance ride to George Washington University Hospital was uncomfortably realistic. Maya had called 911 with genuine panic in her voice, and the EMTs treated my deteriorating condition with professional urgency. By the time we arrived, I was genuinely feeling terrible, whether from the actual poison or from the stress of what we were attempting, I couldn't tell. Dr. Martinez met us at the emergency room doors, her face a mask of medical concern that would have fooled anyone who didn't know what we were planning. What do we have? She asked the EMTs. Male, 42, suspected poisoning. Wife says he's been sick for a few weeks, got worse tonight after dinner. Vitals are declining. Get him to trauma 2, Dr. Martinez ordered. And suddenly I was surrounded by nurses and medical equipment, all of it feeling very real and very frightening. For the next hour, Dr. Martinez and her team performed what looked like genuine emergency treatment. They ran tests, started IVs, monitored my vitals, and maintained the illusion that they were fighting to save my life. The only difference was that Dr. Martinez was quietly explaining everything they were doing, making sure I knew which procedures were real and which were for show. We're going to give you something to slow your heart rate, she whispered during one of the quieter moments. It's safe, but it'll make the monitors show what we need them to show. Is this going to work? I whispered back. Ask me in a few hours. At 11:43 p.m., Dr. Martinez looked at the monitors and shook her head gravely. He's not responding. The toxin levels are too high. The nurses stepped back as the heart monitor showed my pulse becoming irregular, then slower, then stopping altogether. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Dr. Martinez called it. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. Cause of death, cardiac arrest secondary to oleander toxicity. And just like that, I was dead. The next part was the strangest experience of my life. Dr. Martinez had arranged for me to be moved to a private room in the morgue, where I would wait while Maya and Silas monitored the situation at my house. She'd given me a mild sedative to help me stay calm, and a communication device so I could hear what was happening. Lying on a morgue table in the dark, listening to my wife celebrate my death, was not how I'd imagined spending Valentine's Day, but it was educational. The first call came at 12:15 a.m. Rachel's voice, picked up by the listening devices Silas had planted, was clear and excited. Daniel? It's done. He's gone. Are you sure? The hospital just called. Cardiac arrest from the poisoning, just like we planned. There was silence for a moment, then Daniel's voice. How do you feel? Free, Rachel said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. For the first time in years, I feel free. What did you tell them at the hospital? That he'd been feeling sick for a few weeks, but I thought it was just stress from work. I played the shocked, grieving widow perfectly. They didn't suspect anything. And the poisoning? They think it was accidental exposure to the oleander flowers. I told them I had no idea they were dangerous, that I just thought they were pretty. Huh, Daniel laughed. You're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I learned from the best, Rachel said, and I could hear the sound of kissing. In the morgue, I clenched my fists and tried to stay calm. Maya's voice came through my earpiece. We're getting all of this. Keep listening. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Rachel and Daniel discussing their plans for the immediate future. Daniel was coming over to comfort the grieving widow. They would wait a respectful amount of time before making their relationship public. And in the meantime, they would start the process of claiming my life insurance. $500,000, Daniel said. Plus the house, the pension, everything. We did it, Rachel. We actually did it. I still can't believe how easy it was, Rachel replied. He was so trusting, so grateful for every little thing I did. Even when I was literally poisoning him, he thanked me for taking care of him. What about the kid, Eva? She'll be upset, but she'll adjust. Kids are resilient, and you're good with her. She already likes you better than she liked Ethan anyway. That hit harder than anything else they'd said. Ava was my daughter, my little girl who still asked me to read her bedtime stories and help her with her math homework. The thought of Daniel raising her, of her calling him Dad, made me want to climb out of this morgue drawer and strangle them both. But I stayed still and kept listening. When should we start the insurance paperwork? Daniel asked. Tomorrow. I want to get that process started as quickly as possible. The sooner we get the money, the sooner we can start our new life. Our new life, Daniel repeated. I like the sound of that. They talked for another hour, discussing everything from funeral arrangements to their planned move to the Caribbean. They laughed about how boring I'd been, how easy I'd been to fool, how grateful they were to be rid of me. At one point, Rachel said, "You know what the best part is? He died thinking I loved him. Even at